Hello, and welcome to this Beer Bitesize webinar on how to choose the right beer glass offered by WSET. WSET is the world's leading provider of qualifications and courses in wine, spirits, sake, and beer. WSET is the world's leading provider of qualifications and courses in wines, spirits, sake, and beer. WSET has over 50 years experience in designing and delivering education to help both professionals and consumer enthusiasts learn more about wine, spirits, sake, and beer. You can take WSET qualifications in over 70 countries through a network of more than 800 course providers. If you're interested in finding out more about embarking on a WSET journey, visit wsetglobal.com to find your nearest course provider. Now, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available to watch via the WSET Global Events Hub on YouTube. If you have any questions during the webinar, please post them in the Q&A box, and I will try to cover as many of them as I can at the end of the webinar. All right, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Mirella Amato, and I'm the Senior Business Development Manager for beer here at WSET. I've been working in beer for over 15 years now with a focus on sensory evaluation and education. I have a range of credentials, the most notable one being that I am a Master Cicerone. I was the first person outside the US and the fifth person ever to earn this title. I'm also the author of an award-winning book, Beerology, Everything You Need to Know to Enjoy Beer Even More, which is also available in French and German. And I've been working with WSET since January of 2022. And today I'm here to give you some guidance on how to choose the right glass in which to enjoy your beer. Let's dive in. I'm sure you've noticed that there are a lot of different glasses out there. Here's a quick snapshot of some of them. You can see that they range both in size and shape. You may also notice that some of them are used more than once here, so you can see the same glass holding more than one beer. Now, this is because there are some beers that are regularly served in the same shaped glass, and this glass was designed to highlight their specific traits. These are style-specific glasses. Let's have a look at some of them. They'll probably be familiar to you. On the left here, we have the Weizen glass, which was designed for German-style wheat beers like the Hefeweizen, Dunkelweizen. Then we have the Stange, which was designed for Kölsch, the footed Pilsner, which is used for German-style Pilsner. And on the bottom there, we have the Thistle glass, which is commonly associated with strong Scotch ale. Now, on the other hand, there are some beers that are served in a range of different glasses, and these glasses really seem to be more multi-purpose. These glasses will also probably look familiar to you. Here we have the shaker, the nonic pint, the stemmed tulip, the teku, and the snifter. The truth is that, as with other beverages, the shape of the glass you choose for your beer will impact your appreciation of that beer. While it's not critical to use a specific glass or a style-specific glass for any given beer, it is good to be deliberate about the general shape of the glass that you use. So my goal for today is to help you understand how different shapes can impact our perception of the beer, and from there, understand how to choose the right glass for the beer in front of you. Before we get into glassware specifics, though, I wanted to address a critical question. Is glassware necessary? Because it's not uncommon to see people drinking straight out of the bottle or can, as this fine woman is doing here. But is this a good idea? The answer is no. And this is for two reasons. The one that you'll most commonly hear is that our ability to appreciate flavors and aromas in any beverage or food is greatly dependent on our nose. We use our nose to detect aromas. And so if we're drinking straight out of the bottle or can, our nose does not have access to that beer. We'll get some of the flavors from retronasal olfaction, but we're definitely missing out on the full complexity and flavor profile of that beer. So that's the first reason, but there's another reason that I find equally, if not more compelling, and I'm going to turn your attention here to the glass, the perfectly poured pint in front of you, and you'll see that it's been poured with 2 fingers of foam on the top. And that foam was formed during the pour. As the beer was poured, some of the carbonation was knocked out of the beer, rose to the top, and created that head of foam. Now, the brewer who created this beer designed it to be poured properly. So that brewer put in additional carbonation that is meant to be knocked out in a perfect pour to create that head of foam. If you don't pour your beer out, that additional carbonation stays in the beer. It's going to go straight down your throat and into your tummy, and then you're going to feel bloated. So, should we pour our beer out? Is glassware necessary? Absolutely. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's take one more moment before we dive in to discuss a proper pour and how it is that we can achieve this nice 2 fingers of foam at the top of our glass. That way we're not consuming too much carbonation. So if you have a bottled beer, what you're going to do is hold the glass at a 45-degree angle. And then you're going to start pouring down the sides, but very gently. So at this point, you're not creating foam. If you start with the glass upright and you pour straight down the middle, you'll start creating foam right away and you'll end up with a full glass of foam. And that's not fun for anybody. Okay. So once the glass is about 50 to 70% full, you're going to return it to an upright position and you're going to pour down the center. And this is when that head of foam is going to be created. Of course, then you keep pouring until the glass is full and you have that lovely pour. Now, there is one special consideration with bottled beer, and that is beers with sediment. So on occasion, you'll notice a bottled beer has just a layer of off-white sediment at the bottom. And this is often proteins as well as yeast from a bottle conditioning. And bottle conditioning is typically used for Belgian style Abbey beers. So you'll see it there. Or if you have a fine friend who homebrews, or if you yourself are awesome enough to homebrew, then you'll be very familiar with that sediment. So here the pour starts in the same way with that 45-degree angle, straightening at 50 to 70%. But then what you're going to want to do is keep an eye out at the neck of the bottle as the beer is approaching the lip of the bottle. And once you see that that sediment is getting close, you're going to stop the pour and leave the sediment and the rest of the beer in that bottle. Now, if you're a person who enjoys that tanginess of the sediment in your beer, then by all means, pour it in. But if you're pouring for someone else, it's always a good idea to leave that sediment behind so they can enjoy the beer the way it was meant to be enjoyed and then make a decision for themselves if they would like to also try it with the sediment in, which is also always fun, I think. All right, now some of you may work in an establishments with draft lines or maybe so incredibly lucky to have draft lines in your home, a kegerator. And so I thought I'd take a moment to touch on pouring kegged beer as well. So again, very similar. You're going to hold the glass at a 45-degree angle just under the faucet. It's very important that the faucet does not touch the glass. You're going to open the tap fully, pour the beer down the sides, again, very gently. Here, you're going to wait a little bit longer. So you want to make sure that the glass is 70% full. And the reason for that is that that beer is speeding out of the tap very quickly. So it's not going to take a lot of time to create that head of foam. So again, you're at 70%, move the glass to an upright position, continue to pour the beer directly into the center of the glass to form the foam. And once it's filled, you're going to turn the tap off and you're ready to go. Now, finally, I wanted to take a moment to look at the nitro pour, the pouring nitrogenated beer. And what is nitrogenated beer? It's beer with nitrogen gas dissolved in it, in addition to the carbon dioxide. So the vast majority of beers are carbonated using just carbon dioxide, but some of them also have nitrogen gas. So these are beers, most commonly you'll see this in stouts, the beers that have the little widget, the cans with a little widget in them. You might also see Irish red ales poured this way, but you'll know them right away because it'll say nitrogenated or on nitro on the can. And when you have these on draft, it does require a special dispensation system. And there's a different pour, which is again, mostly similar with just a slight difference. So again, we're starting with the 45-degree angle. Again, we're waiting till the glass is 70% full, just as we were doing with draft. But at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to stop the pour and let the beer settle for a few moments. And those of you who are familiar with these nitrogenated beers will know that the carbonation slowly makes its way to the top and creates this nice compact head of foam. And once the beer has settled, then you go ahead and finish filling. All right, so we've confirmed that we should be pouring the beer into the glass, and we know how to pour to knock out that carbonation, create that lovely foam. Let's dive into our glassware selection. Okay, so this is the slide that I showed you before. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is over the course of the next few slides, I'm going to shuffle these beer glasses around, and I'm going to cut through the noise by pointing out things that various glasses have in common. And we're going to start by looking at size. Now, this may seem obvious, but it is a consideration because beers range now from 0% alcohol all the way to 28%, and some are even higher. So if you're drinking a beer that has a higher alcohol content, you're going to want to pour it into a smaller glass. Of course, this helps with pacing and moderation, but it's also very important in terms of carbonation. This type of pour, which is common in wine, it's only going to degas the beer, especially once you start swirling. So with beer, a narrower glass is ideal. So when you have a small pour, which is more commonly used for high alcohol beers, you're going to want that small glass. And for any other beer, you're welcome to use a large glass. All right, now let's talk width. So here you can see that some glasses are wide and others are narrow. In general, a narrow shape or even just a tapered lip is going to concentrate aromas. So this is ideal for beer with more delicate aromas that can benefit from being captured and concentrated. The narrow shape also helps retain carbonation. So if you have a beer where high carbonation is key to the profile, or if you're someone who really enjoys the carbonation in beer, you're going to want a narrower glass. This is very similar to champagne, which is often served in a flute. That way there's a very small surface area at the top, and it controls the release of that carbonation so that you can enjoy a nice effervescent beverage all the way down to the bottom of the glass. Now, finally, and this is not critical, but it is an interesting note, narrower glasses do highlight a paler color. So a lot of breweries with pale colored glasses do like to put them in these narrower, with pale colored beers, like to put them in these narrower glasses so that you're really seeing that pale color. And you can see that more than half of the narrow glasses here have a pale beer in them. These glasses, these narrow glasses, So let's turn our attention to the wide glasses. These are used for beers that have a more pronounced aroma that doesn't require that concentration in order to be enjoyed. These glasses are also generally used for beers in which carbonation plays less of a crucial role. Now, as for color, as I mentioned earlier, it's not critical and so not really a concern. It's perfectly fine to put a paler colored beer in a wider glass. It's just going to seem a bit more intense in color than it would otherwise. All right, let's look at one final aspect of the glass, and that is the shape. Here you can see we have glasses with straight walls next to glasses with walls that are more rounded. The consideration here is how quickly will you be drinking this beer? A rounded glass helps to concentrate aromas. So it's ideal for a beer that you want to take your time with, a beer that you want to sip and savor. Straight walls are designed to shoot the beer to the back of your throat. So these are for beers that are designed for refreshment. I like to say these are the beers that you want to reach for after mowing the lawn on a hot summer day. These are not for high alcohol beers or complex beers. Okay, let's take a moment to put all this together. Now at WSET, we divide beer into 3 general categories when it comes to service. And with each category, we recommend a different serving temperature. Let's take a moment to look at these 3 categories. The first is styles with light to medium aroma and low to medium alcohol. So we're talking about American or international lagers, pilsners, Weiss beers. These are beers that are really designed for refreshment, and so they should also be served well chilled. Straight out of the fridge is perfect. Our second category is styles with medium to pronounced aroma and medium to high alcohol. So we're talking about porters, stouts, pale ales, bitters, even IPAs. And these beers have more complexity to them and they'll benefit from being a little warmer in temperature. So I usually recommend, if you have the patience and you're able to do it, pull the beers out from the fridge about 20 minutes before you're planning to enjoy them. And finally, we have styles with complex and pronounced aromas and high to very high alcohol. So these are your slow sippers, imperial stout, barley wine, doubles, triples. And these beers you're going to want at a slightly warmer temperature, not warm, but cellar temperature. So if you have a cellar or a basement, you're going to want to store them there. Otherwise, if you keep these beers in the fridge, you're going to want to pull them out 30, 40 minutes before you enjoy them, depending on, of course, the temperature of your kitchen or your house. So these are the three categories we use. And I like to use these categories as well because ideally each of them should also be served in a different shape glass. Let's have a look. So the first category you'll remember is styles with light to medium aroma, low to medium alcohol. So these are your lawnmower beers, your American or international lager, Weiss beer. And so these beers can be served in a small glass, but more typically you're going to want them in a larger glass. They're low alcohol styles that you're going to want to drink in pints or half pints typically. The glasses are narrow to concentrate those delicate aromas. And these glasses are straight walled to allow for large, refreshing swigs, if that's your style. The second category is styles with medium to pronounced aroma and medium to high alcohol. These are more complex, but still fairly low ABV. So we're talking about pale ale, IPA, bitters, porters. And in this case, you'll still want a large glass, but a wide lip is fine here because these beers have more pronounced aroma and complexity. You would then offset this wide lip with rounded walls that concentrate the aromas as you start making your way through the pint. Now, the third category, of course, is your sipping beers. So styles with complex and pronounced aromas, high to very high alcohol, like barley wine, doubles, triples, imperial stouts. Now, these beers, as we talked about with their higher alcohol content, need to be in a smaller glass. It's great to have a nice wide lip, which will allow your nose to get in there and appreciate those aromas, even in the smaller glass. And then you're going to want rounded walls again to help concentrate those aromas and also allow for some swirling as you're savoring these slow sippers. Okay, so you can see here, I've reorganized the glasses with these three categories in mind, and you can really see the commonalities within each category of glass. So if you tend to drink beers from the first category, so your lawnmower beers, American lagers, pilsners, wheat beers, you're going to want a narrower glass like those on the left. If you're more of a pale ale, porter, bitter, stout drinker, then you're going to want to stock a larger, wide glass like those in the middle here. And finally, if you're more into high alcohol sipping beers like Abbey ales and barley wines, you're going to want a smaller glass like those on the right. Now, ideally, if you enjoy a range of beer styles, you're going to want to have one glass from each of these three categories. Now, of course, that's not always possible. So, a question that often comes up is what if I don't have the space for three different beer glasses in my house? Can I get away with just one? And the answer is yes. Let's start by looking at the ideal traits that we'd want in this universal glass. First of all, we're going to want a rounded bowl because at any point we want to be able to stop and savor that beer and perhaps give it a little swirl. We're going to want inward sloping walls to capture the aromas if they're delicate, and that's obviously not going to harm a beer that already has more pronounced aromas. And finally, we're going to want it fairly narrow to slow down the loss of carbonation. So the glass that's usually recommended in these instances is the stemmed tulip glass. And you can see here it's medium in size and it has that nice wide rounded base, but then it narrows and straightens at the top. So it has a little bit of everything. Now, if you don't have a stem tulip glass at home and you need to have a beer right away, A few options are the ISO glass. That is what we use for tastings at WSET. And it is a great glass for tasting. For drinking, my concern is that it's a very small glass. You're going to want to refill it very often, and that's not ideal. You can also use a champagne flute, but you're going to run into the same problem. So probably the best glass to reach for if you have it handy is a white wine glass, not a red wine glass, as we covered earlier, because we don't want to degas the beer. But a white wine glass is great, or in a pinch, you can use a juice glass, and especially if you have one with rounded sides, that would be ideal. At the end of the day, whichever glass you choose, it should not only highlight the beer, but also feel good to you. Whatever you do, though, make sure you pour your beer out. All right, that's it for me. Thanks everyone for watching. Please take a moment to complete the feedback poll, which will come up on your screen shortly. Let me look and see if any questions have come up. Okay, so the first question I see here is, does the material of the vessel make a difference? Because of course, we've seen glasses out there that are ceramic beer glasses with the steins with the little lid, or some beer glasses are pewter. And the truth of the matter is, as long as it's inert, in the sense that as long as it's not going to give an additional flavor to the beer and it doesn't have an odor to it, then that's fine. And the main thing you want to be very careful of is that whatever the glass is made of, that it is easy to clean. Because as soon as a glass is not clean, any dirt that's on that glass, the carbonation will cling to, and that's going to break the carbonation out of solution. So you want a glass that is made of a material that is easy to clean and does not have any particular order. So the next question I see here is, how would WSET classify a traditional English bitter? So we classify that as a hop-driven style. In the case here, though, of glassware, I would put it in that middle category. So you see that that dimpled mug on the bottom right. It currently appears to have a stout in it. A nice wide pint like that is really ideal. And again, that's a beer you're going to want. It's got a lovely complexity to it. You want it slightly warmer in temperature. If you're having it at home, pull it out of the fridge about 20 minutes before you're going to enjoy it. The next question is taking beer with directly by bottle giving real taste of aroma of beer? Yes. So as I covered earlier, many people argue that you cannot get the complete aroma of a beer and the complete flavor profile if your nose does not have access to it. And that's one of the main reasons that we want to pour the beer out. All right, the next one, not really about the glass, that's fine, but how do you pour the beer, with or without foam, at once or 2 times or more? Right, so you definitely want to pour with some foam. As I mentioned earlier, the brewer has added carbonation to that beer in order to create that nice head of foam. So if you pour without any foam, if you pour very, very slowly, until the beer reaches the top of the glass and no foam is formed. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Or if you drink straight from the bottle, you're not knocking out that excess carbonation. You're going to drink that carbonation and it's going to be uncomfortable. As opposed, so then the next part of the question was whether you want to pour all at once or twice. And the truth is, any beer can be poured all at once. With nitrogenated beers, they do recommend that 2-step pour, so allowing it to settle and then continuing to pour. And I just heard on the radio recently, a scientist examined that pour to see if it actually has any advantages. And that scientist did find that there were advantages to the pour. For myself, I've also tested it. I've had two nitrogenated beers, one poured all at once, and then one poured with a 2-step pour, allowed to settle. And I found that the flavors were similar, but the texture was notably different. The next question is, how long does beer last in a bottle? There's a few answers to that. The first thing, which is really critical, is that bottle open? Once the bottle is open, you're going to want to consume that beer. Carbonation is a critical piece of a beer's flavor profile. So once it's open, you're going to want to pour it out and enjoy it in short order. I'm assuming, though, that you meant how long does bottled beer last when it's closed? And again, that depends on where you store it. Beer that is stored warm is going to lose freshness very, very quickly. And beer that is stored cold in the fridge is going to last a bit longer. The other factor to consider is which beer are you dealing with? So some beers, like pale ales that are very hop forward or more delicate beers, don't last as well as something that is more high alcohol, like an imperial stout, or perhaps something like a Gers with a notable acidity, because both acidity and alcohol help to preserve the beer. So as a general rule, if you just want to have one timeline, I would say keep it in the fridge up to 3 months. You're fine. At the end of that 3 months, though, you will notice a difference in those beers that have a notable hop aroma. That being said, you can drink that beer in 15 years. It's not going to hurt you. It's just not going to taste great. All right. Okay, it's 11:28, so I have to wrap up now. The recording of the session will be emailed to everyone, as well as being available to watch on the WSET Events Hub on YouTube, where you can catch up on all our previous events. Our next webinar is the last of the Beer Bitesize Week series. It's called How Do You Taste Beer? And it's taking place on Friday, March 1st at 11 a.m. GMT. To find out more and sign up for our qualifications, visit our Where to Study page at wsetglobal.com. Thank you for joining. The webinar has now ended.